Hey, good day, folks. Welcome to another episode of Andrew's Life. I'm back with another video today. On this video, I'm going to discuss purchasing a home on land contracts. Now, before I go any further in this video, I just want to briefly educate everybody on the main difference between buying a house on land contracts and buying a house rent to own. Now, if you're looking to buy a house that's rent to own, in a nutshell, in layman's terms, if you buy a house rent to own, basically you'll sign an agreement with the property owner that you're gonna pay you're gonna pay rent for X amount of time. Like, I'll give you guys an example. You might sign an agreement to where you'll rent the house. You'll pay rent every month for the house for, let's say, 7 years. This is just a generic example, so bear that in mind. So the agreement on a rent to own might say you'll pay rent per month. You'll pay X amount of money per month for rent for 7 years, and you have to pay it on time. You cannot be late. And in most cases, the property owner is going to require you to make a sizable deposit. Like, if you're doing a rent to own and the price of the house is, let's say, $100,000, they might require you to put down $10,000, $5,000. It all depends on who you're dealing with. And that money that you put down is going to be non-refundable. And then what you'll do is you'll pay your rent like you would pay rent anywhere else. You'll pay your rent for those 7 years. And then after those 7 years, either A, the property owner will do what they call in-house financing, which basically it's gonna turn into a land contract type of a situation. Or B, you're gonna be required to have to take out a loan through an actual bank. And if your credit's jacked up, or you think your credit will be jacked up after you satisfy your rental agreement, then I'm going to tell you guys right now, you're going to be better off not doing a rent to own. You're going to be better off either doing a land contract or wait until you have your credit squared away, you have your money right to where you can go through a regular bank and take out a regular mortgage. Now, as far as it goes for a land contract, here's the main difference between rent to own and land contract. Now, if you're looking at buying a house on land contracts, basically, let's say the house is priced at $100,000 by the seller / the property owner. If you're doing a land contract, you're going to sign an agreement with the property owner that maybe you'll go on contract for, let's say, 15 years. So in 15 years, the house is yours. It's paid off completely. It's yours. So you'll sign an agreement that you're going to pay X amount of money. And of course, the interest that you're going to pay, that's all going to be figured out between you and the property owner. And so, depending on who you deal with, they might escrow the property taxes and the homeowner's insurance with their payment, or you're going to be responsible to pay the property taxes on your own. You're going to also be responsible to pay the homeowner's insurance on your own. So it depends on who you deal with. Now, honestly, if you're not able to buy a house through a regular home loan institution, whether it be a broker or a bank or a mortgage company, if I were you, you'd be better off doing a land contract. Because me personally, I don't like a rent to own, because if you go through a rent to own, you're gonna actually pay more money for a rent to own than you would on land contract or through a regular mortgage holder. So, give me a second here. All right, folks, I'm back. As I was saying, if you're gonna buy a house on bad credit, most likely you're not going to qualify for a regular mortgage through a lending institution. Your two choices are rent to own or land contract. Now, me personally, I'd rather do a land contract, because with a land contract, you're going to pay significantly less money for the property compared to a rent to own. Now, that's not always a guarantee, because, you know, back to my rent to own example, sometimes when you do a rent to own, however much money you pay per month for rent, either some of that money will be put towards the purchase of the property, or they'll take all of that money and put it towards the purchase of the property. It depends on who you deal with. Now, me personally, I've always been more comfortable with the land contract. But my credit was messed up during the early to mid 2010s, and I chose to buy one of the properties that I used to own in Anderson, Indiana. I purchased an land contract. It was on a 4-year term. I paid it off in 3 because I worked my butt off, and I made a bunch of extra money on the side. So that's what I did. And now, me personally, when I looked at houses to purchase through land contracts, I tried to not take out a contract. I tried to not do land contracts that were any longer than 10 years. 10 years was my max. So, and now one thing about land contracts is, typically when you go through a land contract, you're gonna pay significantly higher interest compared to a mortgage. Like at the time I had my land contract, my interest was, let me think here. My interest, if I can remember, was about 10%. And at that time, the going rate was like 5%. Now, and the reason why I'm discussing this topic is because due to the high interest rates for many people, and due to a lot of people having crappy credit, and just due to the housing prices, and due to a whole bunch of other stuff that's going on with many people, you got people out here that want to be a homeowner, but they're not going to be able to go through a regular mortgage institution for whatever reason. And there's, you know, in certain housing markets, there's an increased amount of sellers that are willing to sell a home to you on a land contract, which is why I'm making this video. Now, another thing you want to bear in mind when purchasing a home through a land contract is, in most cases, you're going to pay more for that home than the market value. Now, for me, when I did my land contract for my house I had in Anderson, fortunately, I didn't get ripped off like that. But in most cases, I'm gonna give you all an example. Like, let's say you agree to pay $100,000 for a house. Well, if you were to do some research and you were to look up the actual market value of the house, that house might only be going for $60,000 or $70,000. So just bear that in mind if you're going to go do a land contract. Now, you got some sellers out here that are honest, they're decent people, and they're not going to rip you off like that. Sadly, you got many sellers out here that will rip you off. They will take you for a wild goose chase. They'll tell you a crap load of lies, and there'll be things going on with the house that they know about that they're not going to bother to disclose. So just bear all that in mind. you will most likely pay more for the house than market value. And then, of course, you have to factor in the interest on top of that. So let's bear that in mind when you're buying a house on land contract. And another thing, as I mentioned a second ago, when you buy a house on land contract, just like if you're buying a house through regular traditional means, you're going to want to hire a home inspector. And I can't emphasize that enough. I don't care what the seller tells you, what they may have done. I don't care what they tell you, don't care what they show you. I don't care how many people in the community that can vouch for what they claim to have done. I don't care how good the house looks. I don't care how good you think the price is. I don't care if he tells you he's got 100 people looking at the house and he's going to sell the house at the end of the day. I don't care. Hire a home inspector. Do all your due diligence. Call the local city hall or the county if the house is in the country, and find out, A, is the house delinquent in property taxes? B, does that house truly belong to the person that's trying to sell you the house? And also, does the house have any liens? So do your due diligence before you sign your name on the dotted line and you hand over your hard work and money to these people. Because a lot of people have been duped on land contracts before and lost a crap load of money, which is painful. So if you're going to purchase on land contracts, do your due diligence. Now, another thing to bear in mind is when you buy a house on land contracts, you're not going to get the same level of assurance and protections as you would if you were to go through a traditional mortgage. Because on a land contract, if you read the documents very carefully, or if you pay a little bit of money and you hire a real estate lawyer to read the documents with you or for you to interpret what that document is truly saying, there's going to be a clause in that document stating that if you're a day late on your payment, technically you're in default of your agreement, and they can therefore begin foreclosure procedures. Well, it wouldn't be a foreclosure. They can therefore begin eviction procedures and have you evicted. And the only way you would be able to prevent yourself from being evicted is to pay a crap load of money that some of these people that are shady are going to charge you. Because they might be like, okay, you're a day late. Well, if you want to say, if you don't want to be evicted, you're going to have to pay something super ridiculous like $1,000. And if you ask them, well, what's that $1,000 about? They'll make up some crap about, well, it's about legal fees, it's about administration fees and staffing fees, a bunch of fees that they just made up out the side of their face. Yeah. So be careful of that. If you purchase a home through land contract, make sure that you can make all your payments on time. If for whatever reason you can't make a payment, obviously like you would if you was renting, or if you was taking out a traditional mortgage, you're going to want to stay in contact with the owner. So that's one of the main things you gotta watch out for when buying a house through land contracts. And let's see what else here. And another thing is, in many cases, when you buy a house through land contracts, obviously the house is going to be older and it's going to need a considerable amount of repairs. Or if you buy a house that they told you, okay, everything's been done, it's been updated, it's been renovated, as I told you earlier in the video, hire a home inspector and have all that verified. Because a lot of times when you buy a house through on a land contract, what will happen is the seller / the investor, he may buy the house for, let's say, $35,000 through an auction. And then he might hire a bunch of idiots to do the renovations. And a lot of times the renovations are not going to be done correctly. A lot of times the renovations are going to be nothing more than a bunch of cosmetic patch-up jobs. Like, you might look at a house, everything looks nice, the paint is fresh, it's got a whole bunch of decorative stuff on the inside of the house, and then you find out later that the house is infested with black mold, or it might be termite infested. So those are common situations that you will run into when you buy a house through land contract. Unfortunately, I had a friend in Indiana that purchased a home through land contracts, and they moved in, and a month after they moved in, his family was getting real ill. And then it was discovered later that the house was infested with black mold. Now my friend at the time, he was wet behind the ear, he super naive, never owned a home before. So they told him that the spots that were on his wall was from a kerosene heater that used to be in the house, when really all that was black mold. So you're going to want to be very careful on stuff like that, because these people will get you. I'm not saying all people who sell houses on land contract are going to be shady like that, but many of them will, unfortunately. And another thing you're going to want to watch out for is if they're going to escrow in your property taxes, you want to make sure that the amount of property taxes that they're escrowing is actually legitimate. Like, if they're telling you, we're going to charge you an additional, let's say, $2,000 over the year for property taxes, again, call your local city hall and verify that the property taxes are $2,000 a year. Because they might tell you they're going to charge you $2,000 a year for property taxes, and then you find out that the annual taxes are only $1,000, so they might be $500. And another thing you're going to want to do, even after you sign the agreement, I would say every month you're going to want to keep in touch with your local city hall or the county, and make sure that at no time during your agreement, while you're making your payments to pay down the house, at no time is the seller / the owner / the investor is putting any kind of liens on the house. Because you got some of these people that, they'll buy a house, sell it on land contract to people like yourself, and then they'll get greedy and they'll decide, you know what, they want to do a renovation to their own home. They want to go buy a new vehicle. They want to buy a motorcycle. They want to go on a vacation with their family. So they don't have cash money. So what they'll do is they'll take out a loan against one of the properties. They might take out a loan against a property that you're purchasing, because technically the property belongs to them. So legally they can take out a loan against that property. It's not ethical, but it does happen. So you want to make sure that at any given time that never happens. Because if it does happen, then since I'm not a lawyer and I can't give you legal advice on that type of stuff, you're going to want to consult with a real estate attorney and see what legal actions you can take against the seller of the house. Because if they do that, I'm pretty sure the lawyer is going to probably tell you that, yeah, they're in violation of their agreement. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so go talk to a real estate lawyer to confirm that type of information. Because you don't want to make your payments and then you work your butt off, you pay off the house completely, and now when it's time to get the deed in your hand, you can't, because come to find out the seller done took out a crap load of loans, and now you got a crap load of liens on the house. Or you find out that they haven't been paying their property taxes, and now all of a sudden the house is getting ready to go up for auction, the county is getting ready to sell the house through an auction because the owner decided for whatever reason to not keep up on the property taxes. So that's another thing you're going to want to do. You're going to also, on a regular basis, make sure that the property taxes on that house that you're purchasing are being paid. And another thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to iron out the homeowner's insurance situation. Like, you're going to want to ask questions like, hey, who's going to be responsible for homeowner's insurance? And once that's decided, another question that you might want to ask is, if the house catches on fire, it burns down to the ground, what's going to happen? Will I still be on the hook to continue to pay the contract, to honor the contract? Or will I be relieved of that financial obligation? Now, fortunately for me, the people who I purchased my home through, they were good and honest people. Their office was located in Chicago, and I remember when it got to the point where I was ready to cut my last check. My last check was reflecting 5 payments, actually. And I was going to just mail it like I mail every other payment. But I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take a trip to Chicago and give them that money in person and have a receipt in my hand that the contract has been honored and the house is paid off. And that's exactly what I did. I went to their office and I gave them the check face to face. And they gave me a receipt. And then, I can't remember, but I think maybe 2 weeks later, give or take, I got a deed in the mail. And then of course, I had to take that deed to the local county office and get it recorded. So if you're going to buy a house through land contracts, you know, do your due diligence. And when you get ready to pay off that house, don't mail that check. I mean, sometimes you might have to mail it, but if their office is within, I would say, a few hours of where your house is at, go ahead and deliver the last payment in person. That way they can give you a receipt, and then you wait for your deed. And that way, if there's any issues, you can take their butts to court and sue them. Now, if their office is located across the country, which in many cases that's going to be the case, then you're going to want to maybe use some type of, you're going to want to use first class mail, something like that, to where there's a little bit more of a paper trail. That way they can't try to tell you that they didn't receive the money when they did. So, well, that's all I gotta say on this topic. I mean, I might be able to think of a thing or two more to say, but since it's not coming to me right now, we're already over 18 minutes into the video, so hopefully you guys got something out of the video today. If you like what I do, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't done so, subscribe to the channel. And I wish you guys the best of luck on your real estate purchasing endeavors.